No, 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 no. Deck review time! Looks like RJ just found some cosmic dragons. What's up, my Yu-Gi Bros? I'm your host, the RJB0. Welcome to Yu-Gi-Oh! In Business Casual. Yes, y'all are in for another business casual deck review. This time around, I decided to test out Cosmic Dragons / Dragon Stars / Yang Zing / I have a dream that one day Konami will stop renaming this deck. Yes, I decided that there was so much hype around the other decks coming out around Duelist Alliance that this deck has kind of been overshadowed, and I'll talk about the reason why this deck hasn't seen quite as much hype as the other decks in a little bit. But I figured, based on my rule that decks centering around monster effects which activate in the graveyard tend to turn out really well, I figured this deck had a ton of potential and it really deserved, at the very least, a review. So the version that you're seeing in front of you right now is just the last version I tested. It's not better or worse than any of the other versions. They've all had their good and bad, but this one just had the most interesting duels that I could show you while I talked about it. So I'm going to get to why I tested so many versions in a little while, but first, let's get to what I liked about the deck. I like to start on a positive note. I am generally biased in favor of synchro-based decks, just because I feel like the variety of levels required for a synchro-based deck means that you have some incentive to have a non-linear strategy, and you just have a lot more options, your plays are more creative, so I have a lot more fun generally with synchro-based decks. So I liked that about this deck. But the real plus to this deck is, well, appropriately enough, the pluses. Between a streamlined Pot of Avarice, a reusable Abyss Sphere, a boss monster that shuffles your opponent's field into their deck, essentially, and of course the 3 of supply unit, this deck can generate some crazy amounts of advantage really quickly. But the problem is, in the words of my friend Kobe, this deck generates fake advantage, in that you get a ton of different cards available to you, but they don't really do a whole lot a good percentage of the time. And the reason is because this deck is so heavily reliant on your tuners, and you don't have much room to run many of them. The 2 tuners that you really rely on are Mask Chameleon, which is a freaking spectacular card, but you don't really have a lot of ways of accessing it in the deck, and then, of course, the light Cosmic Dragon monster, the Rifun or Chiwen or whatever they've decided to name it most recently. And the problem with that is it is unlikely that you're going to get the necessary number of combo pieces on the board in order to make your big plays. Yes, you can make level 5 synchro plays that are fairly good with this deck, using the Fire Dragon Star and the Light Dragon Star, so you can go for really big Armades plays and Catastor plays. You can even make that new level 4 Synchro Herald monster that makes your opponent, when they mill, it gets banished, which is really good against Shadows. However, the problem is getting the combo pieces on the board, and a lot of the time, in order to do that, you have to sacrifice your battle phase by running into your opponent's monsters, and that makes you extremely vulnerable to ways of disrupting your strategy, such as Dimensional Prison and such as Compulsory Evacuation Device. There are just a ton of ways of having your opponent just totally disrupt your strategy before you can really get your big boss monsters off. And of course, the really big boss monster, the Shofuku or Gongfu, the level 8 Synchro, requires either that you have Mask Chameleon, which once again that you cannot search from your deck, or you have to have 3 combo pieces on the board. And that is really tough to do. It's an amazing play if you can do it, but it's really tough to do with the amount of removal that this format has. Which brings me to my techs of the week. In this case, it's more like my techs of the month. I've been testing this deck for a really long time. Now keep in mind once again that I did test a ton of versions of this deck trying to get the best way to get all of these strategies off. And I found that really the best options for this deck involve 3 cards. The first card is Soul Charge. Soul Charge is spectacularly good for this deck because it allows you to get your 3 combo pieces from the graveyard, or even just 1 or 2 if you're missing just that number and you have another one in your hand. You can get those combo pieces back from your grave and then go for that big Shofuku play, which is even better because you can keep extending your plays by using it to destroy one of your monsters and special summon another from your grave. And if you have the Abyss Sphere, like if you get that rolling with Soul Charge, it's really amazing. So Soul Charge was definitely one of the big MVP cards for testing this deck. Of course, Masked Chameleon is an MVP, but another interesting MVP is Call of the Haunted. Now, this card is going to be really good post-Duelist Alliance, because not only is this deck really good at using it, but also Shadows and Satella Knights. But Call of the Haunted is really nice to have in this deck, because it only really requires you to get 2 combo pieces on the board, because then you can use your Call of the Haunted to get back whichever one you don't have, especially if you don't have the Masked Chameleon in your hand. So Call of the Haunted allows you to streamline your plays a little bit, and it also means that if your opponent disrupts your strategy, it isn't the end of the world, because then you can bring back the monster that you needed with your Call of the Haunted. But the other thing that I tried to do with this deck is to try and play to its strengths. If you're going to get a lot of card advantage, you might as well do something with that. So I started running Divine Wrath. In the version you're seeing now, I only have 1 Divine Wrath, but I was really tight on space in this version, which tried to make the best use of Soul Charge and Masked Chameleon. But Divine Wrath was really great because it allowed me to stop so many big strategies and use that card advantage to its greatest potential. So I have to give this deck a business casual rating, and I will give it an A for effort, because it isn't a very good deck as we know it so far. However, we have had more support announced, but we don't know that much about it. We know that we're going to get a level 7 Synchro monster, and I predict that with that level 7 Synchro, we're going to get a Dark Tuner, since we already have a Light Tuner, and then we have a bunch of non-tuners. I think we're going to get a Dark Tuner, and if it can special summon itself from your hand, that may be what throws this deck over the edge in terms of usability, since it adds speed and it adds consistency to this deck. So I can't wait to see what kind of more support we are going to get for this deck, because I think it has the potential to be spectacular, but it isn't quite there yet. So I hope you guys like this deck review. If you did, hit that thumbs up button. If you didn't, let me know why in the comment section below, and discuss what you guys think of Cosmic Dragons / Yang Zings / Dragon Stars, because I think that this deck could be really cool. And I am planning on doing more of these deck reviews in the near future, so let me know what you guys want to see me review of future decks, and possibly current tier 2 decks we aren't seeing so much of. I have been considering testing Kawaki Marrows and a couple of other things like that, so just let me know down below what you guys think. By the way, I do have round 1 coming up in the next Great YugiTuber contest, which you will see on Underworld6667's channel. I do have a video in there that will be titled Get Down with the Sickness. I'll be talking about modern uses for Deck Devastation virus, so be sure to hit up that video, hit that thumbs up button to support this channel in that contest. Meanwhile, please subscribe for more deck discussion, analysis, and general Yu-Gi-Oh! Shenanigans. I'm your host, the RJB0, and I got a jet.